Welcome. I wanted to spend some time clarifying what Advaita is about, at least in Robert's point of view and Nisargadatta's point of view. They're not identical. And Nisargadatta is not identical to Ramana either. But Ramana and Robert share the same understanding. First of all, there are three selves. Each of us has three. There's the self we wore in the mundane world, which is a psychological composite of memories and concepts. And to this we give ourselves a name, maybe the same one that our parents gave us. But it's a historic psychological self. It's what you ask the average person when to identify who he is or she is. They'll say, I'm a man. I'm 43 years old. I'm a nuclear physicist or a ditch digger. I have 2 children. I'm divorced. Got a girlfriend, dog, and 3 rabbits. I get depressed a lot. I'm moody at times. And at times I'm lonely. That's the average person before they get into spirituality and begin expanding. Now, the spiritual person clings to this identity for a long period of time, even as he or she is having all kinds of awakenings and special states of consciousness, which don't stick. But one day, this person has an amazing experience of realizing himself, herself, as consciousness. I did in 2011, where at first I felt I was love itself. And then 2 weeks later, consciousness sort of did a show for me, exploding from my belly upwards into my heart and into my head and then out into the universe, like Robert had experienced. And a few days later, trying to understand the state, all that I could say and wanted to say was, I am. I have come alive. And by that I mean, I realized myself as consciousness, not the body. The first identity was the complex of the body, various psychological and sociological identities. With the realization of yourself as God, as the life force, You realize that your consciousness processes. Hey, you guys, stop it. Eddie. Come here, Rada. I'm a shepherd or a cat herd. And God bursts forth in you. And you realize that you're not the body. Your primary identity becomes consciousness and the life force. The third self is non-experiential. It's that little Eddie is being a pest. It's that which is aware of both the consciousness and the body. It's this I experienced with Robert in 1995, a few weeks after he left Los Angeles for Arizona. When I had first experience in the shower, looking inside myself, looking for the I thought, and seeing only a vast emptiness, the void, which I had seen 1,000 times, 100,000 times before in meditation. But there it struck me that there was no entity there at my core. There was no ghost in the machine of the body. It could be identified as an entity or an object. And then a few weeks later, I had the experience of waking up from a dream and finding there was no change in me through that process of waking up. It was still the same, asleep or awake. And I saw then, I understood then that both the waking consciousness and sleep consciousness were states that came to me as a seer of the body and a seer or witness of consciousness. You see, I did the awakening experience backwards. I got to the final state in 1995 of realizing I was that to which consciousness comes. I stood apart from it. I was that which was aware of consciousness and the changing of consciousness. Against me, the background witness, which did not change. I was beyond consciousness, prior to consciousness, you might say, or however you want to say it. And it was only till 15 or 16 years later, when in a sense I was born, when I had the God realization experience. Finally, I had an I am, and that I am was God, and that I am was the life force. And it's taken me since then to integrate exactly who I am between the God experience and realizing myself as spirit, and then realizing I'm not even that. I'm that ultimately an unchanging part. Which is aware of consciousness and what happens in consciousness. I watch consciousness, and the watcher is constant. In a sense, the watcher is unchanging because the watcher sees the changing in consciousness, the constant changing in consciousness, the evolution and changes within consciousness, the daily fluctuations of consciousness. But itself is not consciousness. And is not touched by consciousness or the body. You might say the explosive feeling of realization of God was the birth of the divine self. And the second experience, which I had previously to that divine experience, was the culmination that even that I am not. I am untouched by the birth and the death of the body or the coming and going of consciousness. And this brings us to a strange place. Because we know if we check our memories, our first memories, when we first became aware of some scene or ourselves or something like that, that's the first experience of self that we can remember, of that mundane self, you might say, or of, on a vestigial level, of the God self in seed form, as Nisargadatta would say, as that which will come in the future. Because at that point, I wasn't aware of the life force or my beingness or anything like that. So at age 2 or 3, I had my first memory. Now, Nisargadatta thinks that this is a significant point. To be able to realize that you are not present at your own birth. You do not remember your own birth. That you were born as a body is hearsay. It's something you picked up as a learning from others, like your parents. We're always talking about you when you were born or earlier experiences. It seems they never can quite forget about everything that happened in your life when they get old. I used to visit my mom here in Peoria the last years of her life. And all that she ever did was talk about what I was like when I was young, 2, 5, 8, 12, 15. To me, it was kind of boring because I usually had somebody with me and I didn't want them to know all that stuff about me. But you realize, or you should be realizing now, that the fact that you were born, the beginning of your existence, is merely hearsay. It's knowledge gained later during growing up and learning all the stories, or hearing all the tales, and beginning to get an education in books, in school, about biology and so forth, and consciousness and life. But you take it as real, the total story. You're a 6th grader, 10th grader, 12th grader, you walk to school, you go to a certain building, you have certain examinations, you know certain people. And thus it continues in your life, even though you know there's something wrong here. It just doesn't make sense. Something does not compute. Nothing in that world of mankind, the knowledge, objective knowledge that we gain in school and growing up, seems to make any sense. So we begin to search for something that makes sense. I went into academics, studied economics, philosophy, looking for, you might say, in a vague sort of way, truth, meaning something more substantial than knowledge about objects, which never seemed to really describe the objects to my satisfaction. And the more I explored, the more confusing it got, because the more theories I learned. Economic theories, communism, capitalism, various diagrams and equations to explain economic phenomena, supply and demand, market forces, monetary theory, etc. I found it fascinating. But I then went to graduate school in economics at Wayne State University. And it quickly became clear to me that economic theory was bullshit. Just another way of conceiving of the world that explained certain things better, but left other things totally unexplained. I began drifting out of academia at that point. Until finally I left Cleveland and Detroit behind, education behind. Got a tent, stayed in the desert meditating until it got too hot. And then I began my life of being a Zen monk and, you might say, spiritual entertainment that lasted for many years. until I met Robert. I learned during those years of going from teacher to teacher and book to book that what you learn from gurus who are not meant to be your teacher is a lot of stuff that doesn't compute or doesn't fit anybody else's stuff. You just add on to your human identity layers of theory about spirituality, astral projection, demons, no self, true self, all that other kind of stuff. You add it on. And I had given up even that pursuit by the time I met Robert. And then I came to the conclusion very rapidly after seeing Robert that this was my last and only chance to go to the end. And it was through him that I realized ultimately I was that to which consciousness appeared and disappeared. Even today, I talk about it with regard to you. I talk about how I can be aware in the morning of the coming of consciousness. And before the coming of consciousness, there's nothingness. Or more accurately, a very low trickle of underlying consciousness that never comes to much. And then there's the becoming aware that I was slowly becoming aware. And then a bursting of consciousness. Aliyah, yeah, it's good. Bursting of consciousness. So, where are we left? Part of you thinks that you're a human being sitting on a couch in Canada or on a chair in New York or somewhere in California or Colorado. Ali Akbar, can you keep your microphone off, please? And you keep struggling to find the I am sensation that I talk about and becoming one with the I am. Who's got their microphone on? Nima, can you please turn your microphone off?
Hello.
Can you turn your microphone off?
I'm not
میگه
on
میکروفون
the
سقط کن میکروفون سقط کن
So you're looking for the I am sensation. The one that Ramana asks you to feel, to search for. Robert calls it the I thought, to watch where the I thought comes and goes from. And Nisargadatta says, feel for the I am sensation. All about the same. And when you find it in a God realization kind of act, however yours will be, you realize yourself as beingness, as consciousness. And then all kinds of things begin happening. You sense your sense of presence. You sense energies in your body. And you play with them. And you have different bliss states, different visualization states, and seeing of inner light. You might say you come alive in a different way than you had been alive before as an ordinary human. And you flower in this new consciousness. And then you come here. And I tell you that even that is not you. That which is aware of your God realization, that which is aware of your body, that which is aware of consciousness, that's the real you. But it cannot be seen, heard, felt, or understood. That is the subject. And all that you ever can really know are objects, things that you see, hear, taste, and touch, and remember, and think about. All these are objects, and those are the only things you can know. You can't really know the subject. You can try to dive into the subject, but what happens is the deeper you dive, there comes a point when you turn around and start going back outwards, but without thought, and you become one with the world, the experience of the world. And that's where that idea comes from, of becoming Brahma, one with the existential universe. But after a while, you begin to realize it's even stranger than that. The truth is, all the existential world is only there because of consciousness. It does not exist for you until there is consciousness. In other words, so far as you are concerned, in this state, you were never born. You can't even remember the birth of your body. It's a story told to you. It's hearsay. But somewhere a body was born, grew up, and slowly inside that body, consciousness evolved to the point that you had memories and became even self-aware back then at various times in your life. But it's not your life. That body is not you. The consciousness is not you. But you, the witness, have mistakenly identified yourself with both the body and consciousness and God realization. when in fact, all of that's just a show for you as the witness. You are in the background as the witness, but are untouched by anything you see, feel, hear, or taste. Those things occur within the body, but more essentially within consciousness. But you are not consciousness. You're separate from it. The witness, or the awareness of consciousness. You are not the body. You are not your mind. You're not even that consciousness. It's as if the universe was just doing its thing of creating a body, creating a mind. All the mind develops out of the body when the nervous system gets right. Consciousness is developed out of the body. You have nothing to do with that, with the body or consciousness or your mind. But you've identified with it at some point in your life. Maybe when you were first aware or a little later on, you identified with consciousness and your body. But you are beyond all that. The whole universe that you know is available to you, but it's a little speck. The human body in a vast universe, yet that human body and that human consciousness is aware of the entire vast universe of nebula and star systems, billions of light years away. And they're all in you. A billion light years are in you. Also, the submicroscopic world, the atomic world is in you. The microscopic world is in you. It's a fact in you. It's an understanding in you, or an experience in you. First, the mundane you that plods along, not knowing what the fuck is going on, trying one thing after another, looking for a clue to how to live your life. Until you realize who you are as I am. And that I am has come alive. But that I am itself is false. It may be God, but even that doesn't, in the slightest bit, touch your true power and glory as the infinite nothingness into which all of this is taking place. You, as the awareness of nothingness, are infinite and eternal. Matter of fact, space and time do not apply to you at all, so you're not even infinite and eternal, you're beyond those. Those qualities belong to the existential world of astronomy and astrophysics, or of the microbial world. All of that is you. All of that is knowledge and experience occurring to the body and to that consciousness which you've identified with. But you never were the body. The body's not real in that sense, because it has nothing to do with you. The body's ever changing. It has a beginning and an end, neither of which you'll ever be conscious of. You weren't conscious of your birth, at least you don't remember it. And you probably won't be conscious when your body dies. There is a book by Nietzsche, also Sprach Zarathustra. Zarathustra is coming down from the mountain where he spent 10 years. And he passes a town where there's a big festival going on downtown. And there's a brave tightrope walker, many feet off of the ground, who's walking across. And some demon jumps on the wire while he's on it and shakes the wire. And the walker falls to the ground and is dying. And Nietzsche, or the man, whoever it was in the story, goes up to him. And the man is worried about where his soul will go, what will happen to him after he dies. And this man that Nietzsche talks about as the hero of his book, Zarathustra, says to him, "You will not be conscious of your death. You and your soul will be gone even before the body dies. So worry not about that future. There's no horrific ending for you after you die. There's no hell you would go to or no heaven. Those are just concepts. Concepts made to keep people in line. So too it is with you. I don't remember my birth. My first memory is of hitting my head on a table when I was 2 or 3 years old. And I watched my mother die. And she wasn't there. She was not there even when we left her. 4 hours, 5 hours later, she died. You will not be there usually in death. Your body will have failed you. And consciousness will have left, as well as memory and mind. So that when you're there, there's no one to witness it. Even you, as the absolute, will not be able to witness your body dying and your mind dying if consciousness is not there in the body anymore. This is how the witness knows the world and everything else. It knows it through your human life. Now, I know this brings up a lot of questions. How come I don't know other people's lives like I know my own? But as Shankarananda used to say, Shiva Yoga. There are many objects, but only one subject. There's only one absolute. There's only one knower. And he knows everything in everybody's life. He's the knower of everything in everybody's life, that one knower. And you are that. Now, if you followed what I said, this should blow your mind. Maybe raise more questions than are answered. But at least it's a direct pointing to the understandings you have to have. You have to realize the self, the second self. Of you as consciousness and not the body. You as spirit and not the body. You as God and energy and the life force, not the body. The body's merely the theater in which consciousness and the mind play. And you are the one ultimately to be discovered by you, that consciousness comes to and thrusts itself upon you. You didn't ask for it. You didn't ask to be born. You didn't ask to have consciousness. And when you have a body and you have consciousness, that's when all the shit begins too. All the misery, all the pain, the loneliness, despair, the relative happiness, the briefly happy marriage, the birth of your first kids, and all the things that go through with that, all the struggles, all the protection, all the despair of seeing your kids really wanting to have nothing to do with you anymore, and all that kind of stuff. It comes with the body becoming aware of itself and the mind creating all kinds of stories about your life when in fact you know nothing about what's happening. You don't have a clue. You go to school to learn clues about what's happening, but if you're like me, the stories told there don't fit my experience. I feel that there's something wrong with those stories. They're not telling the truth. They're incomplete. They're like kindergarten and you want graduate school. The mundane life is that kindergarten, that awful kindergarten of living the American dream or the Polish dream or whatever dream and expectations a Pole would have, or a New Yorker versus somebody from Colorado. The human is not you. This is what Robert says. This is what Ramana says. This is what Nisargadatta says. But for Robert and Ramana, they still call that thing that is aware of consciousness as consciousness or supreme consciousness. They don't call it the witness that is separate from the consciousness that they're observing. So there's a tiny contradiction there, but it has the same properties and qualities that Nisargadatta talks about, of being without form, without time, without space. And all of these things come to that eternal, beyond eternal entity, are thrust upon it, are forced upon it by the play of life. And that absolute misidentifies itself with your body and your mind and your mundane life, and later with your God realization experiences, when you realize totally that you have come alive in the vastness of the energy of the life force. I know this is not a simple tale, but it's the grand scheme that I speak of, the overall story, final story, that your nature is of nothingness. You cannot be known to your own self. Only the experiential can be known to you. And everything in the experiential world is impermanent and temporary, but you are not. And because you are not, you recognize the flow of temporality in the existential universe, and time is born. These are very rarefied teachings. Jay, can you open up the ultimate medicine to,
Yes.
I don't know what page this will be for you.
I'll find it.
Chapter 7, you are that which observes the coming and going of consciousness. And I've got it as page 113, but yours is less. And it starts with Maharaj saying, if you are really conscious of everything you see, would you ever try to enter consciousness? Can you find that?
Yep. Come on, Jesus. Yeah, chapter 7, mine is page 101.
Now,
Shall I?
Just read from where I told you there, all the way to the next page, the middle of the page, till the visitor says, yes, I understand intellectually.
Let's see. Visitor.
It's the second visitor talking.
Does it start with visitor, one of the things that Maharaj was talking about? Is that what it starts with? Because I'm on chapter 7.
You're apparently not where I am.
This is the chapter, you are that which observes the coming.
I understand. I'm trying to direct you to the paragraph.
Okay, well.
If you are really conscious of everything, have you seen that one?
All right, hold on. The pages may be different, but the content should be the same. And
yes, can you find that sentence? If you are really conscious of everything, Maharaj is saying that. Okay.
I don't know. It should be here, but it doesn't appear to be. God, I mean, it's.
Okay, let me read it.
Okay, I'm sorry, Reggie.
If you are really conscious of everything you see, if you are really conscious of everything you see, would you ever try to enter the consciousness and thereby drag yourself down into the suffering? Consciousness brings you trouble, does it not? The very moment you become conscious that you are, the trouble started. Whatever suffering you are talking about began only when the consciousness came upon you. In other words, you as the absolute had no trouble whatsoever. Matter of fact, there was nothingness there. Suppose somebody wants to being rooted in consciousness, being once again being rooted in the suffering and whatever comes out of that. All you need to understand is the nature of consciousness and feel that you have nothing to do with it. Consciousness is a guest with you, is it not? It was not there, and in the future, it is not going to be there either. It remains with you temporarily. And in that temporary knowledge about consciousness, you want to understand everything in that consciousness itself. What can you really understand in the consciousness? Unless and until you try to be aware of this consciousness, which is coming and going, which is conditioning, concepts, ideas, hopes, and all the other things. In other words, that's what I've been talking about up till now, is becoming aware of consciousness as a totality, watching everything at once, grasping everything at once. In order to do this, you really have to have a substantial feeling of I am and be settled in the I amness in order to be able to for you to grasp the entirety of the I amness and everything else in consciousness. So the visitor says, so the awareness must be beyond consciousness, Maharaj. It is already beyond consciousness. Already from the beginning, it's beyond consciousness. If awareness is there, that is where consciousness appears on. It's where awareness is that consciousness appears. It's not the other way around. It's you are the absolute. You have nothing to do with the world. You have nothing to do with consciousness. You have nothing to do with your body. And where your awareness is in that absolute is where something appears in consciousness. You're aware of that appearance in consciousness. Now the body is there for you. At this time, your body is there for you. If awareness is there, that is where consciousness appears on. Now the body is there for you. The body is made of what? Elements, is it not? If for once you understand that you are not the elements, you exist prior to the coming of the elements. You exist prior to the birth of your body, to the elements within the body, the physical. The moment the consciousness of I appears on you, you have the experience of the world. Therefore, you have to experience of suffering as well as happiness. Try to know the nature of the suffering and happiness, which is coming through the consciousness into the mind. And once you understand that, you know that you are not anything of the sort. Then that's all. Suffering has nothing to do with you. Happiness also has nothing to do with you. All of this happiness, all of this happening in consciousness, and you are observing the consciousness coming and going. All this is known by something in you. This is your nature. You are that. And by that, he meant that which knows the comings and goings of consciousness. The moment the consciousness comes and the moment it goes away from you, you are understanding that everything in it, is it not? You are understanding, let me see, you are understanding that every day, is it not? I don't quite get that. Is it not in your experience? In the sleep state, you are not conscious. In the waking state, you are conscious. That means all these things are there. You are there. You know that. Who knows that? Who knows the coming and going of consciousness? The particular thing that knows it is you. That is your true nature. Do you understand that? So he's saying the whole show is happening in consciousness. And consciousness is aware of your body and aware of your sufferings and aware of the comings and goings of life and of all the happenings in life. But you are not that. You are not that. This is mind-blowing. This should be mind-blowing to realize you're entirely beyond your life. Your primary state is entirely beyond life and cannot itself be known. That life is just a passage of phenomena which you're observing and identifying with. So stop identifying with it. Just be aware of it. Note its existence and its passage. Okay. Feedback. Any questions? Any comments?
I found it, but our books are 10 pages apart.
Yeah.
So it's just almost impossible. But yeah, I'm there. No, the feedback would be, I don't know anywhere on any other circumstance in any other, I don't know, incarnation could somehow something be invested in me from you with such power and grace. I don't know. I can't even put words. I can't describe it. It is so powerful. I wish Mary were here. I wish Stevie were here. I wish Martin and Annalise, Anya, whatever her name is, all these people were back, because this is indescribable. As Siddhar Meshwar spent the first 100 pages of his book talking about the guru, every single descending, abiding grace of God's manifestation you bring to each satsang. And I love you. I can't even go beyond that. It's so powerful.
That's why we are so lucky.
Absolutely.
They chose to leave.
I agree. I don't get it. If
Mary
anyone,
had a great experience of opening to God,
I
and she left.
I don't know.
Because of some mishigas about feeling
know.
jealous and threatened and so forth.
I know.
They chose themselves. They lost out.
I don't know. I can't fathom it. I know her, or I don't know her, but I can't approach. I can't. Of anyone, I would have to say, no. Well, this is the moment. These are moments that are, even if they weren't recorded, my takeaway would be the most powerful, that I can play these satsangs again, but just to be here. I mean, that's what I didn't do for so many years, that I didn't come here. And when I did, it was just transformative. Every day, my takeaway helps me in the mundane world, even though that I say I haven't had an exploding I am. My I am is gentler, but it does take me and bring me to situations where Shakti explodes through me. And you do it every time. I'm breathless. You take my breath away. My heart is just pounding. I love you so much.
Ian.
During your talk, I went to sleep, and Cassie's really good. She nudges me when I go to sleep, and I recognize that sleep is the last strategy of the ego. And I observe the construction that is Ian. I observe that constantly. And what's happening for me is I'm just able to forgive that. It does what it does. It knows not what it does, I think that they say. So this experience with you is kind of like a top up, like a supercharge. But more and more and more in my life, I'm understanding the three levels and what Nisargadatta says. That I really do. No, I can't say I understand it. I'm accepting it is becoming that the three levels are there. Yeah. Thank you.
The strange thing is, Nisargadatta says, and not, Robert doesn't say it, but he implies that enlightenment is an increasing conviction
Yes.
of the reality of the primary life,
Yes.
that which lies prior to consciousness.
Yes. And
It's a
my
matter of conviction, because it has to root out all the other preconceptions in your life.
yes. Simplify, simplify, simplify. Yes.
Bernadette.
I do know how lucky I am to be here. I never was satisfied with explanations in the mundane world either, but you speak about things that I'm very interested in, and I hang on every word. And even if I haven't experienced everything, it feels, the way I feel just keeps bringing me back, and just feel I'm home. And thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Mark.
Angie, the things that you speak about are for me are actual, like, physical realities. They're not hypothetical or intellectual constructs. And by summarizing and explaining, you increase the clarity of my focus. So I thank you. I thank you for all your efforts. You're amazing and irreplaceable in this world.
Spencer.
Hi. What are we talking about?
I don't know.
Okay. I am glad that I can finally come to one of your Wednesday satsings, though I usually can't. So I like to see what everybody gets up to in here on Wednesday when I'm not around.
We got your ass. Anyway, can end recording now, Mark.